So what skill sets am I lacking in that I haven't really had to use that I needed to practice and work on so that I could be really good at my craft, right? Because I believe that conversation and sales, because when people say, oh, we're not salespeople, well, we are though. The word sales has such a negative connotation, but at the end of the day, that's what we are. We are a consultant. We do consult people. We don't need to have a negative or slimy connotation with that word if you treat this as something you want to do and you believe in and come from a place of authenticity and honesty.
You're listening to the #1 real estate podcast in the world. We talk with real estate professionals all across North America about their wins, losses, lessons, and stories to help you win in your local market today. My name is Cody from Sheridan Street. I'm joined with Vikram D-Ol of the Real Estate Sales Academy. Hello. You know what's funny? Like, I'm going to tell a quick little story before you hop in here, Vic. You know, Vic and I have been traveling together over the last year in Medellin, Colombia. We've been all over Latin America. And we were recently chatting about, I think we're going to go to Brazil next, or Lima, or we're going to go somewhere next.
I think we're probably going to end up in Mexico City.
Maybe Mexico City. I don't care where we go. Just, I don't want to spend a crazy amount of money. So, you know, keep that in mind that I'm on a budget when it comes to travel.
I'm like going to Mexico City.
That's what I was literally saying. We were on FaceTime last night with our girlfriends, and they're like, we should go here and here and here. I'm like, whoa, settle down. Like, calm down for a second.
It was like $8,000 for a small shoebox Airbnb in Rio, and I'm like, dude, there's four people working for like 3 weeks while we're there, and we're all on Zoom calls all day long. I'm like, we need like 6,000 square feet for how loud all four of us are.
Yeah, I'm quite all right, but Vic and I, you know, I was making I think it was probably about a month ago. We're just like out walking through Medellin, Colombia, and I'm like, you know, Vic, like, you should really get like a jingle, like a local jingle for the Real Estate Sales Academy back in Seattle, just so people that know you're back. Like, it's Vikram from the Real Estate Sales Academy. I think that would be really good. I think it'd be really good. I think that would be a great marketing jingle. So I wanted to share that with all of our listeners. If this is your first time tuning into the Our Agent podcast, I want to say thank you for listening back on iTunes or Spotify. You know, thank you. Like, we literally doubled the downloads in the last month. It's been crazy.
That's crazy.
To see the amount of people that are listening to the Our Agent podcast. I want to say thank you more than ever.
We appreciate you.
It's definitely we do appreciate you. If you got any value from any of the 200 and some odd episodes we've done, all we ask is you leave us a review on iTunes.
How many are we at?
Yeah. If you got any value, leave us a review. We don't monetize these things. Not saying that I wouldn't take a sponsorship. I'll take a sponsorship all day. But that
if you
said,
want to sponsor us, we'll take your money too.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I don't know.
Vic,
I don't know if it would benefit you, but we'll take your money. I'm looking at how many episodes we have.
Molly.
Oh, we don't have we don't have the number on there. Episode 206. 206 episodes. 206. And we started this thing last year around this time. So it's been a tremendous amount of work.
We launched in December of last year. December 1st of last year. Yeah.
Holy crap. Really?
It's been crazy. Yeah. It was December 1st of last year. We officially launched the podcast. Yeah. It's coming up on a year.
We'll be at 210, 211 episodes which is an insane amount. It's an insane amount. So you guys, literally, there's literally something for everybody here, whether you're a brand new agent, you're a team leader, you're scaling, you want to invest, there is literally something here. And we're going to actually get a couple of cool people. Have we had Jen Cudmore on yet?
No, we haven't had Jen on.
What? Oh my God. So we're going to get into some spirituality next year with some of our guests that talk about like the karmic value of money and the spirituality of money. It's going to be really cool.
We're just getting started.
I think Cody and I just got into our groove with I
think we're in our rhythm now. I think we're finally in it. It took us 200 episodes. So that's one thing. If you want to start a podcast, it's going to take you 200 episodes to get into your rhythm.
It would be so discouraging, Cody. Jeez. We were interviewing 5 people a day. 7 people a day. So our style didn't have time to grow as fast as our numbers did. And then as we would go back and would review, would listen, we'd learn. You guys, same thing in your sales skills. If you're not reviewing, if you're not monitoring, if you're not upgrading, you're going to have the same conversation 3 years later. So the conversations we're having now far better than they were back in the day, but we were doing such a high volume because Sharon said post 365 in a year. So, you know, we're going to give it We're going to be short a third, but I'm happy with 210 because the production value of our content is not been, it hasn't skipped a beat. And our teams were just not able to keep up with 5. It was a lot. I mean, just can you imagine writing copy for 5 full episodes?
Shout out to Sophia and Paul and Andy for doing, putting out so much content for this podcast. But we have a guest today. So let's transition. I'll give you an opportunity, Vic, to intro our guest, and then we're going to hop into it today.
Super pumped. So she's part of Real Brokers. I don't even know if that's how we met or not. I don't remember exactly how we met. I don't actually remember some days how I met my girlfriend. So if you guys are listening back and I forget how we met,
I can remind you if you want me to. You want me to remind you?
You could. I think I'm good. Thank you though, Cody.
Okay.
And so we met, we jammed, and I was like, oh my God, she's amazing. Like, she crushes her market. She's a high producing agent. She's got great energy, great vibe. She's all about community. She's all about her family. And when she came and said, I want to work together with you, it was because she wanted to have more time with her family, right? We get into real estate for time, money, and freedom. A lot of people make the freedom for money, but they lose the time. And if you keep doing the same thing, so she came to us and then she started working with Cody because she's like, this makes sense. I need to get these 10,000 leads that I have called on a regular basis. And I'm really excited because not only is she a rock star agent, but she is hilarious. Like, I don't know how much humor we're going to get from you today, Molly, but I'm super pumped to welcome my friend Molly Mekus to the RE Agent Podcast. Molly, what's up, baby?
Hello, my friends. How are you guys?
Fabulous.
All is good in the world.
Fabulous. So why don't you give us a quick little 30 seconds and then we'll jump into what's working for you in your market.
Okay. Well, I'm so excited to be here, you guys. Thank you. Coming all the way from exotic Davenport, Iowa here. So, it's pretty...
Iowa.
Woo, I know. I am not from here originally, but landed here now. So I'm actually from the Chicagoland area, but been here about 13 years now. So it's a really nice, cute little area out here in the middle of the United States. So it's been a kind of a wild ride getting here, but it's kind of cool. So I feel like I'm kind of right in the middle of you guys right now, with Cody, you being in Canada,
it's true.
and Vic,
it's
and
true.
God knows we're in Colombia. So we're just kind of like all throughout, the central and southern, continents here, I think. So
we're all over the Americas.
Right. They're just, all 3 of our wild personalities are just stretching it out, I think.
That's dangerous.
It is dangerous.
So how did you land in real estate? Like, let's get the 30-second because I think, your background plays a role into your success. How did you land into real estate and what did you do prior to this in the sales world?
Okay, so prior to this, real quick snippet, when I was finished with college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so my dad made me get a job selling copiers, which, again, if you've ever dealt with a copier, you probably hate it, and if you've ever dealt with copier salespeople, you probably don't like them either. So I had to learn about personalities pretty quickly. And I started that right after 9/11 in Chicago. So security was always locked down on buildings. So I had to get real creative on how to get in front of people and how to get in buildings in and out without getting thrown out. So I did that for quite some time. And then from that, I moved into actually training and development. So I did that for a number of years. I led sales training and development teams, like created performance objectives for executive teams, things like that. So I traveled a lot. And then I've been married to my husband. It'll be 18 years on Sunday. So
congratulations. Happy anniversary.
He hasn't killed me yet. So I guess we're okay. He goes along with all my wild ideas here. So I was pregnant with my twins and I traveled all the time. So I thought to myself, I don't want to do this. I work a lot of crazy long hours, which I knew real estate was going to be the same, but I wanted to stay at least in the relatively the same zip code and not be on planes, different states, things like that.
Yeah.
So I actually had a very good friend who was in real estate in the area here in Davenport, and she talked to me about it. And I said, well, no, you're the realtor. Like, everybody has realtor friends. Like, we're, no offense, but like, oh, are we all a dime a dozen? Like, no. The phrase that they told me was, her dad actually had said, there is enough real estate around for good agents. So they brought me in, and I decided that yep, I think this is a good fit. And I've been doing it now. It'll be 8 years in August.
So you jumped in. Yeah, you've jumped in. You're at 8 years. That makes you a senior citizen in the real estate game. So congratulations.
It does.
Your real estate AARP card's on its way.
Right, it should be.
Dinners at Denny's once a year for free on your birthday, and a discount at IHOP for 25%.
Great.
That'd be amazing.
If I could eat carbs well, then that would be awesome.
So I think there's some interesting things that have played into your success, because you're a very high producing, most agents will never do 15 deals a year, and you're crushing that number, right? Like your average price point's not as high as some of the other areas, but the amount of transactions you do is extraordinarily high, and you keep it all together, which is impressive on its own. But how do you feel, right? Like, well, let's back this up better. You said something really interesting, and I think it plays into real estate really well. I had to figure out a way to get in front of these office managers or whatever in a building that had strict security. How do you think your ability to get through the gatekeeper has helped you in the real estate market?
Well, a lot of times it's just finding a connection with people. So that was how I got started with that. So I was at the time, and I've carried this through, I was 22 years old, right? I was 22 years old, so I knew everything, right? I mean, we all did at 22.
22
and
does,
so,
22
right,
does that.
I knew everything. No one could tell me any different. I knew everything. And
Absolutely.
so who was my gatekeeper, though, in the building wasn't necessarily an office manager. It was the security guard. So how do I, because they're the ones who would either let me in or really honestly throw me out most of the time, right? So how do I make friends with the security guard? So I would make friends with the security guard. I would bring them a cup of coffee. I'd learn about their families, right? And they would let me stay in the building long enough before they got enough complaints about me wandering around to throw me out, right? So then it would be like, oh, hey, Tony, hey, Molly, all right, no, here's your cup of coffee. And then, all right, we'll see how long you last today. Thanks, Tony. Okay. So we'd go through. And then I would do it at odd hours, though. So I would go in around, I would hit it at different times. So I would go in around maybe 4 p.m. because I had learned that the decision makers for the office generally stayed late or they were in early. So if you ever wanted to go knock on a door, the receptionist probably was gone. But if someone's knocking on your door close to the end of the business day, usually the person who's still there is the decision maker. So I would usually get a little bit more face-to-face time with the person who was actually going to sign the contract if I went at odd hours than if I went, at 10 a.m. when people were in meetings or wanted to deal with anyone other than the person who was, going to change their toner. So that's how I started off with that, making those types of connections. Then fast forward that into training and development. When I was there, I had to learn how to connect people's jobs to their personalities, right? So we were talking everything from someone who was, in all the different types of roles that I did, was anyone who was making $7 an hour to someone who was making, $300,000 a year. How can we figure out how to make you effective at your job, but communicate that to them? So now we go into real estate, where everybody is in every every type of job, right? Because you kind of have to have a job to have a loan, right? Or, if you're independently wealthy, cash is great. If I had all cash buyers, that would be amazing. But, that really doesn't happen very often.
Rich parents still exist, but not as often.
Well, I didn't have them. So that's, that's something that's great. But, that's not really my sphere. So that would be wonderful, but really not my sphere. So then we have to figure out how do we communicate then with those types of people who work in those roles as well. I think as you talk to any realtor, they'll tell you, or if you've ever been in a deal with someone before, and let's say an inspection comes up and there's different types of personalities. Is your buyer an engineer, right? Or is your buyer a scientist? Is your buyer, a mechanic? Is your buyer an HVAC person, right? There's different types of personalities when you're coming up in your sales process or just the process of buying a home or selling a home, and different personalities that you need to learn to communicate with effectively in order to make their process catered to them and make them feel confident and supported through it. And not
Right.
that you're just some Joe Schmo on the street trying to get getting a house sold. Like, you need to make sure that you're invested with them and make sure that they are comfortable with you and your knowledge as well, and being able to communicate the information to them so that they know that they can make the next step or not make the next step, because we're not always closing deals. Sometimes we're walking away from them. And that's part of our job also, is to know when to walk away.
So when you say, part of the job to know is to when to walk away. Now that's a really hard pill, I think, for a lot of agents, especially in this market, to
I think
walk
it's hard
away from deals.
from everybody.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, you and
yeah,
I,
from
you
everyone.
and I had this conversation. It's like, man, we should have fired that person a long time ago.
I should have let this person go a long time ago, and it's super hard. But what's really interesting, I want to get your insight on this, Molly, and I would love your insight on this as well, Vic, because you were on the ground selling. Well, you're going to answer my question, Vikram. You both have very similar stories in the sense that you both come from sales backgrounds. And Molly, you come from a sales background, but you originally from Davenport. Like, you're not originally from there. So in Vikram, you were the same. You weren't originally from Seattle, and you both dominated and you both crushed your market. So I guess maybe we can speak to an agent that, what was your strategy coming into the marketplace? That, because it sounded like you were super strategic, and I know, Vic, you were super strategic as well, but starting with Molly, what was your strategy coming into the marketplace, that allowed you in order to close the deal flow and continue to grow year over year?
Well, after telling your husband you're going to quit your job and there's no guarantee you're going to have a paycheck for months, and you have 2 infants, that's a real great conversation to have. That's awesome.
Danny's awesome.
Just
Danny's
so you know.
awesome.
He is, he's, God bless him, I tell you, because I would probably not be as open to that conversation, let me tell you. So what I did was, I was on a limited budget, right? I mean, I quit my job. I didn't do part-time. I said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do this all in, right? So I knew that I had to try and be in front of as many people as possible. And how can you do that on a limited budget, right? So at the time, I had gotten away from the phones, and that is an honest statement. I have since gotten back into phones, but at the time, I just wasn't comfortable with it. I don't know. It was just a fear factor within me. I just felt like I wasn't great on the phone, but I knew I had to have the numbers. Right? So what did I do? I worked open house after open house after open house, because I knew that if I got in front of X amount of people and had X amount of conversations, that I could land X amount of appointments, right? So I worked open house. I didn't care if they were on the market 300 days. I didn't care what price point they were. I made friends with agents in the office. I would take any listing, anytime, any day, and work an open and just get people in there, because time was my commodity. I had nothing but time. So that's what I did. I worked, literally, I had nothing but time. And so I did that at Creative. I was at the farmer's market, and I would sit there and do an open house at the farmer's market and try and talk to people about buying and selling there. I got creative and thought outside the box to any way I could get in front of people, because I wasn't from here, work here. So I did have contacts in a small sphere, of people that I have coworkers who are now part of my sphere, who I've bought and sold with. But I tried to do that. And what's kind of funny is my first client that I closed with was actually one of the twins' NICU nurses, just from sitting in a room with her for a month. And then I ended up, and thanks, Kayla, so one of and from there, I grew from there. And unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, however you want to look at it, I was hospitalized a few times after I had the twins, and every single one of my nurses I ended up doing a transaction with after the fact. And I think it's just because they got stuck talking to me for that long. So it's just, for me, it was all about being in front of as many people as possible, and then following up. And then when I had a little bit of money, I bought the cheapest, and I don't want to use the Zillow word, but back then I bought the cheapest zip code, and I just tried to convert any leads I could. And it wasn't very much money that I spent, but any number that I got, I would call and I would talk to them, and I would try to do anything that I could with that. And literally anybody I could talk to, I would try and get in front of. And that's really how I worked at that first thing. No lead was too small. There was nothing I was too good for. I literally grounded and pounded that first year and then followed up and followed up and followed up. And that's basically how I made it my first year. And in that first year, I sold $3 million. The average agent here their first year sells probably between 500 and 700,000. So that first year I sold $3 million.
Just for context, your average price that first year, which was 7 years ago now, what was the average price back then? Because I think
it was probably around 90,000.
So for context, that's like 30 units.
125, maybe around there.
So let's call it 125. That's like 30 plus units in your first year.
It was probably a little less than that. But yeah, there was a lot of units, so I'd have to look at the numbers.
25, let's call it 20 to 25 in your first year.
That's probably about right.
And it was the grind. It was an everyday grind.
It was a lot of work. And I remember sitting in the Ulta parking lot and crying the first couple of months because I'm like, something's got to hit, right? Something's got to hit. And then
hard.
It did.
It's super hard.
The first couple of months were hard. And I think that's going to be, a realization for some of the agents that came into the market, in the past 2 years or so where it was easy. And now it's not as easy anymore. And you really have to work and stay in front of people.
There's agents we talk to every day, Cody and I, that are like, hey, we need your help. We need your support. Some agents need Cody more than they need me. Some agents need me more than Cody, right? Some agents have a big database that they're not doing anything with. Some people don't know what to do, even if they had a big database, and they need to have the basic conversation skills. There's a lot of agents that are 10 years that have seen good times, right? They got in 2012. It wasn't horrible, right? It was decent. And they cruised through. Then 2015, it started to pick up. 17, 18, they thought they were rock stars. And unfortunately, they were. But unfortunately, it wasn't them that was the rock star. It was the market that made the rock star. And now that the market is hard, because this is the first hard year in a decade, really hard year, putting a lot of people out that thought they were good. And unfortunately, because when you think you're really good, and an ego attaches to that. And that ego that attaches to that won't allow you to bring yourself back to reality and ground yourself and say, hey, wait a minute. I was good, but maybe something shifted and I'm no longer that same person. They're not able to get the help. And I think when you come from, like, for me, I came from a sales and training background, very similar. I had a Cutco office. I had cell phone store. So I was constantly training people, not at the level of what you did, but I was constantly training people. And when I was 17, I saw the value of good training. And I saw the agents that role played and practiced, the agents that came to the office, the agents that showed up and did the work, the agents that listened to their mentor and not try to shift everything around. It's like, here's a script. I mean, look, I got my framework right here, right? Like, I'm an NEPQ trainer. I got my framework right here, have it on my desk every day, because I might forget the right question to ask, but I know that, okay, wait a minute. If I don't get a situation question, if I don't get a problem in there, if I don't get a solution, if I don't get a consequence, I'm not going to be able to book an appointment. And so what a lot of people, and to answer your question, Cody, a lot of people don't have the sales grit to be a successful salesperson. And real estate is not about being an advisor. It's about being a salesperson that then educates themselves to the advisor role. And a lot of agents, unfortunately, too, they come in and, I hope one of the things that come from the lawsuits is that you're no longer allowed to be an agent solo. You have to come in through a verified channel to be trained, to be taught, to actually learn how to be the advisor. With all the lawsuits going on, I hope that's one thing that our industry sees a change in, because it will help elevate our entire industry. So training, sales, and support. Now, Molly, you came to me a few months ago, very successful. You're a top agent in your market. You're doing a ton of units. You already have sales skills. You already had a database. You already knew how to generate leads. You were doing all the right things. Why would an agent that's already successful humble themselves? Because I think it takes humility to say, hey, I want to learn a different skill set, especially when you're having success. Why would an agent do that? Like, hypothetically, why would an agent do that?
Well, I can tell you why I did it, but and I think that this, And I would hope that other people would do this too. So in my case specifically, I was like, well, you know what? And this is a specific example, but then I'm going to go broad.
Sure.
I've been the trainer for so long that I haven't been trained, right? And so my skills were dull. I mean, they were dull. And as I said to you, I remember I'm like, you know what? I don't know what I don't know, because I haven't been immersed and made to do things that I don't want to do, right? Like in so long that I know that I need to do. I need to have some accountability, and I need to have somebody put my feet to the fire on this. But the other part of it is I saw the writing, and I think a lot of agents who pay attention to the market trends and things like that, we saw the writing on the wall that it's going to get hard, and it was going to get tough, and it was going to slow down. So what skill sets am I lacking in that I haven't really had to use, that I needed to practice and work on so that I could be really good at my craft, right? Because I believe that conversation and sales, because when people say, oh, we're not salespeople, well, we are though. I mean, we make our money selling things. And
we
sales,
get a commission.
the word sales has such a negative connotation, but at the end of the day, that's what we are. We are a consultant. We do consult people. I mean, we literally make a commission, right? So we are salespeople, but we don't need to have a negative or slimy connotation with that word. You are good at your craft. If you treat this as something you want to do and you believe in and come from a place of authenticity and honesty. And that is one of the reasons when I thought about this, I'm like, I really need to talk to other people too about what's going on all over the place. Like, I live in the Midwest in a small area. What are other people doing? What are other people sharing aside from my little small area? I just said, I don't know what I don't know. And then, and we kind of laughed during our conversation because he said, what are your goals? I said, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. I don't necessarily need more sales. I don't necessarily need this. Like, if I don't sell one more house, I am not in financial trouble. Like, I know that I don't want to sound like snobby or,
No, you're smart. You're smart. You work hard. You've had a good career. You've always put in the effort. You work your face off. Like our call we had was you were driving from like an appointment that was 3.5 hours away, and you were like, do you want to have...
I was driving from Chicago. That's why it was confusing. I was driving from our rental property in Chicago that we still have back to Davenport. This is what it was.
Yeah, and you're like, hey, I apologize. There was a fire. Do you want to reschedule the call? And normally, like, I would yell at myself for taking it, but just your demeanor on the phone was just like so inviting that I was like, nah, let's just do it. Like, I'm here at a coffee shop. My internet's not that great. Like, let's just do it anyways. Like, if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. Like, normally I wouldn't do that, but you just seemed like different than people that I talked to. And but the thing is you were commitment, your level of commitment. It's like, I'm not going to not show up. I'm going to show up. I'm going to tell him what's going on. I'm going to let him know, and then we can reschedule. And you were apologetic. Like, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, life happens. But unlike a lot of other agents that just flake on you and take zero account, you were accountable the entire way. We had a great conversation. I laughed my ass off. I'm like, woman's hilarious. But I could, like, you took your charisma and your skills, which is why you are where you're at. A lot of agents either have skills or charisma, and the agents that have both, I think, have a little bit more of an advantage. And if you just have skills, like, trust me, you're going to do fine. And if you have a little bit of charisma, you just have a little bit more fun doing it.
Well, I mean, you have to have a little bit. You can't just be dry. I mean, it's boring. Like, and trust me, I have to modulate depending on the client too. Like, some people don't think I'm funny. I wish they all did. But
I wish everyone thought I wish everyone thought we were funny, but like,
they don't.
When it comes to like authenticity, and like maybe we can wrap up with this, because I think that some agents and just like I think I've struggled with this myself. Like, how authentic is too authentic online? How authentic is too authentic when it comes to connecting with somebody in a buyer presentation? And especially now, I think that everyone feels a little bit more tense. Especially with like everything that's happening with buyer representation and the market changing, and people just are more tense than they were 3 years ago, because it's really interesting in the sense that it almost feels like in the real estate industry that we're actually facing what people like restaurants faced in 2020. That's almost like how it feels. Like, it's like, oh, you know, some businesses are down 40, 50, 60, 70%. And there's these restaurants that have gone through the eye of the storm that are now open, and now real estate agents are sitting there being like, okay, like it's almost like we're in that same, you know, it's like we feel like we're shut down, like the inventory's not moving. You know, we're like, a lot of agents are struggling. Like, but counter to that is like, how do I then become more authentic, right? Like, how do you guys see authenticity play into business, especially when things feel so tense?
Well, I was talking to, actually, it's kind of funny you brought this up. I was talking to Vic about this just the other day. And I can say that when I've always done my buyer or listing presentations, I have always talked about how everyone is compensated. I've always, and I guess my recommendation to agents who have problems talking about hard things is that you have to demonstrate your value. So part of that is, you know, being authentic is demonstrating your value and not being afraid to talk about how you are compensated. In the past, it's been very easy to glaze over it by saying like, oh, the company is compensated by this, or, oh, this is this is my company's standard, or, oh, this is the policy, or all of these different very easy phrases to glaze over how you're paid, right? Well, that's not authentic. Like, oh, well, the company policy is 6%. Well, it's negotiable. It's always negotiable. Yeah. Everything's negotiable. So I think that's going to be where we're going to see some agent fall off, because people don't have the skill set or the knowledge or the courage to say, hey, this is what I charge, and this is why I charge this, right? Yeah. Because like, there is no standard. There is no like, oh, this is what this is. I charge this percentage because I do this, I do that. Here's my case study. This is how much it costs to stage. This is how much I do professional photography. You frame it for them and you say, this is why I charge this, right? You can negotiate with me on this and we'll talk. And sometimes I charge this percentage because of a situation, and sometimes I charge this percentage because of a situation. Let's roll. Let's talk about why we're going to come to an agreement on what your end cost will be, whether it's the seller will be paying for it, whether you will be paying for it, whether the seller's paying for both sides of it, but everyone's on the same page, so that when we walk into a house, whether it's a buyer or a seller, everyone knows all the information. And then all of a sudden, it's not like a tornado when we're going to write an offer or we're going down to sign listing paperwork, and now we've got to backtrack and then try to tell you, oh, this is why I'm valuable, and oh, this is why you should pay me this, but I didn't do anything to set that up for my value beforehand. So now I'm fighting a losing battle, and like, for why you just have to show your value. And then it's an easy conversation, because they say, hey, I have Molly working for me because she does all of this, and the proof is there. Like Sharon says, proof over promise, right? If I show you all the things that I do, it's a much easier conversation. The other part is too, great, go interview 3 agents. That's fine. I would love for you to interview other agents. I love competition. Go ahead. I'll give you a list of questions to ask them. Please, I'm prepared, and then come back and talk to me, and then let's go from there. So I know it's hard right now, but hard is good, right? Hard isn't bad. Hard is what makes people better. So I think it's going to be really interesting for what goes on. But for a lot of agents out there, this isn't really affecting them, because their business model isn't changing, because they've always demonstrated their value from the very beginning. For newer agents or agents who haven't, or just have never had that discussion before, this is what they should be working on, is demonstrating their value, because we're good and we're necessary, and we do protect the public. So we need to be able to show that and demonstrate that value, that we are a necessary process, and that we do have a very valuable function. But if we're trying to do that on the back end, we're going to lose every time.
PSW, you guys, write this down. PSW, problem, right? What's the problem? Solution, okay? What's in it for your client? Problem, solution, what's in it for your client? PSW, if you always state the problem with not having buyer representation, and you guys don't need me. Like, you guys don't have to have a buyer's agent. You can go direct. You don't have to have a listing agent. You can go to Zillow and do a for sale by owner. Here's some
Absolutely.
Here's some tips. right? Even if I gave you my photographer, even if I gave you my stager, even if I gave you all of my tools, you still got to figure out how to make the recipe work. That's why you have me. I've spent a lot of time, money, and energy to craft the perfect recipe that works to get you typically 2%, 6%, 8% more than the average listing. Here's the problem. Here's the solution. What's in it for me, or what's in it for you? And if you want to go and be really transparent, hey, here's what's in it for me. You know, one of the things, Cody, we used to say is, I used to tell them, I said, look, I'm going to get you at least this much, right, over list price. Why? Because that's the market. The market says, based off of the past sales, that anybody that puts your house on the market is going to get you average 4% over list price. That's the market. Of course, anybody who puts a sign in your yard is going to do that. I said, but my fun is where I get you 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10%. And I said, and here's what's in it for you. I said, but can I tell you what's in it for me? They go, what? I said, I sell a lot of houses. And if I get everybody an additional 5 to 7% more because of our system and processes, here's our case study, here's our case study, here's our case study. You know what that means at the end of the day? I can sell less homes, make the same income that I need to live where I want to live, give you a better quality, because I'm going to make up the sales price that all these other agents have to go sell a bunch of homes and never be available. And so I get to have a better quality of life. But that's why I work really hard for you. And they're like, holy shit, nobody's ever told us the truth. I said, now, if I don't get you at least what the market's going to give you, then I'm willing to play in on helping you guys get the net number that you wanted. And like, how would you do that? I said, well, I'll give you a discount on what I normally charge, right? I'll give you a discount, just like if Nordstrom's has a shirt that's damaged, I'll give you a discount because my services were damaged, or we did something wrong, or we timed the market wrong, and that's my fault. And they're like, wait a minute. So you're like our partner? I said, 100%. If the house doesn't sell, I don't make money. If the house sells for normal price, here's what it's going to be. If it sells for less than what the normal is based off of the data, and if it sells for more, I want to be a partner. And as a partner, what happens? And they say, well, as a partner, if I make more, you make more. I said, great. How does that look for you? And they're like, oh, well, we could do a bonus structure. I'm like, I love bonuses. And we would often get a 1% to 2% bonus on our listings if we exceeded certain benchmarks. Proof over promise, as Molly said. So authenticity, right? And Cody, you're really big on authenticity. You do the trial in Sheridan Street, or you used to do the trial. Mm-hmm. If you guys are listening to this podcast, Cody's technically not doing the trial, but if you hear this particular podcast, he might let you in because I mentioned trial. And even though this is going to launch next year and he's done doing it, he might let you in because he's got a big heart. But it's all about proof over promise.
Man, this was a ton of fun today. A ton of fun jamming or around
Molly's
just getting like, yeah, Molly is a rock star.
I know we're running on time here, but Molly started working with you guys, and she actually started working with you guys because she has a bunch of age leads that she didn't have the time to call everybody. And
Yep.
How many, since you started working with Cody's company, you've had how many live transfers? Do you know?
I have had, I've had 12 live transfers, I believe.
And how many appointments have you booked out of those 12?
6.
You guys, do you
Pretty
hear
good.
that? And some of these people, did they say to you, Molly, we're not in a rush?
Oh, every single one of them.
And you've booked 50% of them into an appointment. Did you put them on was their first thing was, hey, can I put you on a drip, and when you're ready, you call me?
Oh, did I say that?
Yeah.
No. No.
Molly had
Please, if anyone's listening to this, please, for the love of God, if I hear you say that, I'll call you. I'll reach out to you when you're ready.
No.
So Molly had an amazing conversation with one of your age leads at Cody's company, Sheridan, called. And the woman said, we're not in a rush. And so Molly said, oh, yeah, no worries. And then she said, what was it about this house that you were interested in? And she said, oh, well, we're looking for a laundry on the main floor. And she said, is that different than your current home? And the woman said, yes. She said, the laundry in our current home is in the basement. And Molly then said, oh, well, why is that important to you? No, the woman said, well, do you know where this laundry is? And she says,
Yeah.
Molly's humor, gotta love Molly. She goes, well, I don't know exactly where it is, and I can find that out for you, but I know one thing. And the woman says, what? Well, I know it's either on the top level or on the bottom level. And the woman starts laughing her ass off.
It was a ranch. So I'm like, I either know it's on the first floor or it's either on the main floor or in the basement. So it's on one of the two. I haven't been in that one, but that's where it is. So.
And she went from, we're not interested, we haven't talked, we're not committed to buying anything to, well, we're not, without Molly asking what your price point is, she told her, well, we're not. She's like, well, what are you kind of looking for? The woman said, well, nothing over 225. That's our max. People that aren't in a rush don't have a max because they don't know. So obviously they've done a lot more research. You then booked an appointment for 2 days later.
Mm-hmm.
And my assumption is, have you had that appointment?
No, the appointment's actually today at 2:00.
Oh, my assumption is that based off of your initial conversation, your ability to discover people, ability to get people to open up like a beautiful rose, my assumption is that they'll probably be in a house if they're qualified within 90 to 180 days based off of what other calculated choices they need to make getting their home sold.
And we've talked live a few times since then. So I am confident that they will be at the appointment today.
I love it.
You guys, so everything works when you stop being a salesperson and you just have fun. But when you learn the frameworks that allow people to open up, asking the sales question, isn't it a lot more fun?
It is.
A lot more fun.
I think the other part of it is too, is that I really don't care if they buy a house tomorrow or not. I don't.
Yeah,
and maybe it's my
matter.
tenure in the industry. Maybe it is. I don't care. And I tell them that in my buyer's consultation too. I said, I don't care if you buy a house tomorrow. I don't care if you buy it next week. I don't care if you buy it in a year. And that really does help. They're like, oh, okay, good. Oh, she's not just in it. Because I do want to help people. Because at the end of the day, we're not always doing dream houses, right? We're not always like having in these wonderful, glorious situations. A lot of times we're dealing with people at sometimes the worst times of their life. So we always have to assess the situation. As funny and as joking as I am, there are lots of times we're dealing with death, divorce, bankruptcy. There's a lot of times we're dealing with situations that are just really not great situations. Yeah. So we really have to, assess from there and treat it with kid gloves. So, with all of that, we do have to come from a true place of helpfulness. I think the more authentic that you are when you're communicating that, even over the phone, like with your tonality and your voice, just truly coming from, hey, I'm just calling to help you out. Like, hey, you clicked on the link. I'm just giving you a buzz because I got an email saying that you wanted me to call you with some answers to some questions. That's all I'm giving you a call about. No worries, no problem at all. Then it's like, okay. It's a different world rather than like, hey, it's Molly. I heard you want to buy this house. It's a totally different phrase, and just a different way of you just have to approach it differently and you'd be amazed at what happens. So that's just be yourself.
Yes, Molly, we love that you're winning. Love that, love your energy. And if somebody were to want to reach out to you, maybe they want to have a conversation, maybe it's agent referral, maybe they're listening to the podcast and they're in the same area, where's the best place we can send them for them to have a conversation with you?
Yes, you can send them to my email address, which is molly@mollymekusrealtor.com. I am on Facebook as well, or my Instagram, which is Molly Mekus Realtor. Any of those are great places. You can also reach out on my cell phone as well. I'm not going to give it out on this, but you can also DM me for it and you can reach out that way too. I got a lot of weird calls, guys. So,
it happens. Yeah, I can only imagine. Molly, I want to say thank you for joining us today. I want to say thank you for tuning in to another episode of the RE Agent Podcast. We'll see you soon.
You guys are awesome. Thank you.